Dear colleagues, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the next session, plenary session, Models of Competencies and New Literacy in the Digital Age. At this plenary session, we would like to mostly focus on what to teach and how to teach in our modern world, why we have this new digital literacy, digital competency term, and what we need to focus on in educational programs for children and adults. So we do hope that our today's panelists will focus on the practical, down-to-earth part of that issue. But obviously we are going to start with some theory. I'd like to remind you that you can send all of your questions, all and any questions that you have in the web chat. We are going to see them. We have this beautiful tablet PC. Now the address of web when speak is written on the reverse side of your page. So please participate. I would like to introduce all members of our panel discussion. First of all, Maria Dobrikova, the main expert of the Institute of Education of High School of Economics. My name is Maria Mikhailovna. I am the program director of the charity fund of Sberbank, which is called Contribution to the Future. And obviously our guests today. Please welcome our guests and please go to the stage. Pekka Mattila, this is the representative of Aalto University Executive Education and the managing director of the group and the practicing professor. Natalia Zhuravlova, head of the block of Sberbank for the development and the career services in Sberbank. Svetlana Avdeeva, the head of the labs of the new constructs and test designs of the new school of the High School of Economy, and Holstrom, the senior managing partner of Gartner across Europe. Andrei Chertok, the head of the Center of Research of Data of Sberbank. Well, I think that you actually understood from the first part of the discussion that the world is changing and we are fully immersed in the digital world, and we have to somehow find the opportunities to live and to work in this new world and to find a safe and secure place and to give our children the proper education, relevant education, and to get and develop our own skills. So it is a very relevant issue that is being discussed. What model of competencies and model of new literacy should be present in today's education to make sure that we can live and work and prosper in this complex and diverse and developing emerging world, this VUCA world as it is called sometimes. I would like to give the floor to Maria, and she is going to discuss that topic. Dear colleagues, I'd like to stand up and I'll be very quick in talking about the digital literacy and what is literacy in the modern world and what trends dictate this literacy and what does that mean, what are the implications for the school and for the developing the competencies on the workplace. Now, there are two key trends that's I'm going to use the clicker myself, by the way. Yep, sorry about that. So yes, the first major trend is that the information is becoming is growing in huge numbers. What does that mean for an individual, for his or her private life, and what does that mean for businesses? The second major trend is that the majority of the routine tasks are being automated on a step-by-step basis, and it can be delivered by AI. Now, the illustration of the first trend, the growth of the digital data. Digital data are growing with breakneck speed, and it is the sensors and the individuals individuals that produce this data, not businesses. And this is the diagram that everyone knows. This is the growth of the demand for the non-routine tasks and the decrease for the demand for routine tasks that can be delivered by the algorithm. So what is the digital literacy? What is that? A new system or a new tools? Now, if you look at different variations of literacy, what is literacy actually? Literacy, first of all, is the ability to understand and to work with information in different formats and for different tasks and different contexts, and to be able to interpret it, to use that information. And the literacy can actually make a person happy and to leverage the opportunities that the society provides him or her today. Now, literacy is a social thing. It depends on the formats of communications and technologies that are used in this community. Now, if we write on some old paper, we need to know how to use that paper, but now and the pen, and now we need to learn how to use the computer. So this is a kind of a flexible thing. And it has to be updated. It is updating all the time. It is focusing across communications, on communications, because a person can express some ideas and insights to his employer, to the state, or to the community, using that literacy, and to get the information from these parties. Now, what are the peculiarities of the information and communication in the digital age? Now, first of all, the information is ubiquitous. There is a lot of information, and there is no quality standard for this information, because various organizations and stakeholders produce this information, and you cannot really understand whether it is truthful or not. Now, it is easily accessible, easily creatable, and you can be an author and a reader at the same time. Third, the information is presented not only in linear mode, so you do not only read from left to right, but on the internet you can go on a different path. You can make a search pattern really non-linear. Now, information can be presented in text, in image, in video, in audio, and all that requires the ability to use different instruments and tools to create information, to store information, and to get access to the information and to protect information, obviously. And that means that when we try to do something with information with the digital world, we need not only to have the digital skills to use that tools and to know where to click, but we need to understand what is the principle behind me analyzing and seeing that information. What is the principle of this information getting to me? Because you need to understand that the information is being generated by people, and it can be generated to cater for the various interests, because it can be biased and it can be manipulated. Now, as for the format of delivering the information, I said there is text, there is image. We can crystallize two different types. First of all, speech and letters, and writing. What was the first, and secondly is the image, and how these things are related to each other. So, for instance, when we went to the museum, we went to the wardrobe, then we saw the mummies there at the museum, and then we went home. That's one story. And another story is that they were amazed with the mummies, they were amazed with the interior design of the museum, and so on and so forth. So first type of information is logical, and second type of information is environment-based information. So you look at the environment, and to be able to manipulate all that, you need to activate and enable your thinking, like creative thinking, when you find some non-trivial links between different parts of information that I work with, and you need to filter, to have this bottleneck to remove the redundant information. This is the second skill, because you need to know how to work with information with different formats, visual, text, images, quantitative information, and you need to get all that tools that are needed to interpret and to get this information, store it, and then protect it. Now, that means that the digital literacy, several elements like working with information, critical assessment, visual interpretation, and working with different types of media. And all that is underpinned by the traditional literacy. You need to count, to write, and to read. So the traditional literacy is the foundation, but in new digital era, it is expanded in new formats, contexts, and tools with its specificities and unique character traits. Now, from the perspective of the businesses, what does that mean? Well, the data are becoming a new commodity. There is a very great book which is called Capitalism of Platforms. And he talks about new platforms like Google, Facebook, Amazon, Airbnb, and other platforms. Platform is a kind of a type of a business model that is surviving thanks to the leveraging and aggregating a lot of data. And these platforms are the meeting points of users from different groups, and they exchange data between each other, and the owner of the platform, the orchestrator of the platform, can actually process the data and to use this data for some other means and tasks. Now, the raw data that are being aggregated by the platforms are often not structured, raw, and you need to process them to make sure that they are standardized and processed and put in order, and to make sure that you can leverage this data to answer this or that questions and to get the insights. Now, there are obviously some risks. You remember that the Congresses had hearings about the leaks from Facebook, so there is a risk, and Facebook failed to protect its users, and there was a major scandal. So who owns all this raw data that can be used to resolve our tasks? So is this kind of a like a forest or a river, belongs to everyone, or is it the owner, or is someone who writes the code for this platform? And the third driver, yes, we have a lot of information. It changes everything, how we live in terms of individuals and the businesses. And the third trend is how it all changes based on given the fact that we use AI. AI means that we can use it to put data in order. So yes, you can say that the data can learn, but how do they learn? It is not done automatically, because Zuckerberg actually says that checking the posts to find terrorist propaganda will be done and performed by 20 people. That means that the artificial intelligence is not a magician that delivers everything by itself, because there are people needed who structure and process and train data.
And all this data answers a certain question. It's not just about a certain set of raw data. We need to put the question first that we want the answer for, and then we need to identify the features in that set of data that's going to help us answer the question. So we need to learn to frame the question and to identify the meaningful features in the data set. And this is not a skill that is inherent. I know that there's a lot of school kids, school pupils, who are not that good at framing the question before they actually comprehend the answer. So why do we find it so hard to think in terms of data? Why do we find it easier to verbalize information as opposed to expressing it in data? Because statistical thinking, digital thinking, is akin to visual thinking, where I'm not recounting things in a linear order. I'm highlighting the most important things, and then I'm exposing the relations between the most important thing and all the other things. So data processing is about finding the meaning and identifying patterns. Let me give you a few examples about how you can show the natural information and what's the orderly display of the same information is going to be. This is how you can look at the composition of digits, a table of products. These are the attempts to identify patterns. Very important for children to understand that one of the same thought can be expressed in different forms. Proportion. A proportion is something that's present both in natural numbers and in fractions. It's important to be able to have a command of methods to appraise probabilities and other mathematical formulas. Creative thinking, critical thinking, understanding what makes a certain thing convenient or inconvenient for us, you need to understand the questions that are hidden beneath the surface. And here are our roles in the digital world. On the one hand, I'm a generator of raw data. I go to the public services portal, I go to Facebook, I leave it on my digital footprint, and then the owner of the platform can use my digital footprint, then analyze my footprint to its own ends. I can use data to create my platforms. That's very important for business models, for platform business models of all things. And I consume data that is put together by someone else. So the elements of digital numeracy is the ability to use communication tools, man-to-man and man-to-machine. That also includes patterns and linkages. The second element is thinking skills, critical thinking and creative thinking. You need to be a thoroughly social person, you need to be competent in interacting with other people, and you should also be responsible and ethical. You need to think broader, you need to think about consequences, what's going to happen if I place my data there or here. You need to be able to protect yourself in the digital world, for that matter. At school, that can be taught in all kinds of areas: literature, math, technology, art, etc. I create certain types of information and I tailor that information to a certain audience. All of that is going to serve my opportunities and my interests. Protecting them, developing them, exploring them. Masha, how about we ask how things are in Finland? Yeah, it would be actually great if Pekka could give us his perspective from Finland.
Thanks for a very good introduction. I would like to start with some fundamentals, really, regarding this topic. I think in the future there are some skills, some components of literacy that are needed for each and everyone, independent of role and task and profile. First of all, we need meta skills. Skills of learning new skills and getting rid of, giving up the old and obsolete skills. In the world of technology, everything is happening so quickly. New things emerged and old things become obsolete faster than ever before. Instead of clinging to the old knowledge, we should, in a way, learn how to learn new things faster to the depth that is needed. Some of them we need to know very profoundly, some of them only a shallow knowledge, pretty superficial knowledge will be enough. That will be the first thing. And then learning how to give up and get rid of let go of the knowledge that we don't need anymore. So that is the first component, managing and mastering the meta skills. Secondly, I think what we need definitely is this kind of, in a way, ability to understand that technology can also be it is a great source of solutions for the most important societal problems. But at the same time, it can be a source of lots of desperation. And we need to actually go back to the basic skills of coming from arts and humanities, this kind of ethical literacy in a way, that are we using technology for good or are we using it for bad? And those things combined with meta skills are necessary. Then we need to understand, I think, also this kind of, we need to start working on wider profiles. It will be very difficult at any workplace of any size if we have these high-tech people and then we have these low-tech people, and we are not able to bring people together and make them work together so that they have at least the basic knowledge of each and everyone's role and how everything comes together. I'm working with some of the leading companies in the world every year, and many of them struggle with these topics. Some of them they have been investing in digital capabilities, but they are not able to connect the new business with the old business, and the organization becomes, in a way, starts suffering from rivalries and internal tensions. So those are some of the basics. Meta skills, ethical skills and collaboration skills. I would start there. Then when thinking about different audiences, I think we need to understand that we have very different target groups. Kids, naturally, but I'm not worried about the kids at all. I think we are already doing a pretty good job there. They are learning to code and they are very savvy with technology already at a very young age. Where I see larger gaps are actually, I'm not worried about kids or students, but where I see that, where I'm a little bit more concerned are actually the professionals that are in the workforce today. Many of them are not digital natives. And we need to keep on working longer careers, you know, like many of us have still like 30, 40 years to go. And we cannot be laggards in a way. How to upskill people that are already in workforce? What are the necessary levels of digital knowledge at in different roles and at different organizational levels? I think that is something where many organizations struggle. And also, when thinking about the creative destruction, if we look at the Joseph Schumpeter's a great idea, that industries, companies, workplaces, they keep on evolving, and some of them disappear when new industries and companies emerge. But at the same time, it's a human tragedy in a way, that some people with great skills suddenly, not overnight, but over time, suddenly they learn that they are not needed anymore. As a Finn, I'm very much familiar with the story of Nokia. It happened almost overnight when they decided to change the platform. And suddenly, more than 10,000 people were obsolete, and they became redundant. They weren't needed anymore. The code they were so used to wasn't the choice of the future for Nokia. So how to retrain and reskill people and help them to convert themselves from one profession to another. That's something I'm very concerned, and that's where I see many companies and industries struggling. Thirdly, I think we have leaders, managers, who need to lead digital natives and very high-tech people, and also combined with low-tech people. I think leaders, especially, they need quite broad knowledge about how to manage these things, how to make everything come together and work as a team. And you cannot make anything work as a team if you don't know nothing about technology yourself. So we need this kind of basic package for each and every leader so that they can be effective in their roles also in the future. That is actually what we are working on with my colleagues on a daily basis at the moment. And this is a great challenge, and I think actually many leaders are a little bit afraid that, will I be relevant in the future? So it's not only about professionals or engineers, I think it's also leaders who are a little bit afraid that what will the future have for me? Am I still relevant? Am I being needed? Finally, when thinking about when should we learn these different skills, I think we are going to see radical changes in the educational system. Because everything changes so fast, we cannot think that after high school, people are joining a college and university, and then they spend, let's say, 5 years there. They leave the institution with a master's degree, and then they are ready for the rest of their lives. That's not going to be the case. And I think it is not the case today either. And at least I think that the changes we are going to see in many countries is that the elementary school level, the high school level, I think the kids are quite able to navigate independently there. They understand that you can have this kind of bottom-up approach or top-down approach when building your own cognitive architecture, just like Maria illustrated very well. I think the changes will apply mostly to the high schools and the colleges and universities. Most probably what we are going to see that people leave those institutions younger, after only 2-3 years of education. But then there is this kind of commitment to lifelong learning and education, that they are coming back to their old institution, to some other institution, and they are having these fixed kits many times during their career. Some of that will be all about evolution of the professionalism, getting updates in a way. And for many of us, it will be a need to learn completely new professions and change our professional identities. So I think that is what the future is holding for us. Finally, I think there is a fourth, in a way, set of skills that we need, fourth component of literacy. Just like Maria said, I think we are coming to a world where there's so much information and data coming from everywhere, and we cannot distill it or analyze or process it all. So we need to become better at understanding that this is something that is worth spending time on, learning it, really grasping it. And this is just a fad or a fashion that comes and goes very swiftly, and we just need to know very little about it. And even more so, there are also things that are not relevant, that won't be applicable. And in a way, we have this fake news coming from everywhere, also in terms of professional knowledge and technology-related knowledge. So we have seen every year more and more fraudulent companies. Some of them, the most promising high-tech companies, for example, in Silicon Valley, have turned out to be, like fake stories and false promises and so on, and collapsed very fast. We need to get better in understanding where to invest, not only money, but also our time and attention. And I think this kind of ability to read and understand and assess the viability of the knowledge is becoming very essential. Those were my 5 cents.
Спасибо большое, Пека. Очень ценно.
Thank you very much, Pekka. Very interesting perspective. Yes, Masha. I think it's very interesting that you are broadly pursuing 2 approaches. One is preemption. So that's essentially about foresight. Where are we going and how is technology going to develop? And the other approach is catch up. Who's lagging? Who's going to need to change fast? Is that 2 approaches? Perhaps Natalia is going to to tell us what Sberbank is doing in this regard. Yeah, thank you very much. I'm going to indeed set out the example of Sberbank. I'm going to tell you how we work with competences to illustrate and show for our participants and colleagues the problems that we encounter. I think these problems are the same as are encountered by the companies that work with the competences model. It's good for our discussion. We certainly do have a competences model. It was updated a year ago. I do draw your attention to the fact that we have a dedicated competence that is called innovation and digital skills. We are keenly aware of what the skills are and the rest of it is. We may have broken all the methodologies, but we actually grafted the English word onto the Russian text here. AI, innovation and digital skills. We updated all the other skills too, for that matter. They help working in the digital world. For instance, in the KPIs, we wrote up the ability to work in flat organizational structures, to work in different roles that is more inherent in digital native companies. The model of competences was developed by our top managers, by our executives, and this is critically important actually for the model to work there in the real life. How do we use the competences model? Besides being a document, besides being a concept, the model of competences is something that needs to be communicated to employees. It is something that needs to be a matter of motivation. You need to create incentives for people to pursue those competences, to develop them actively, to sustain them. We are living in this so-called HR cycle. I think this is a standard set of stages. The cycle starts from recruitment. If you look at the whole thing as a cycle, then promotion takes the person to a certain new turn in the spiral. And all the stages in the HR cycle are really pervaded by our competences. We evaluate people, we plan their careers, we develop them, and the whole thing is part of the competences model. Another very important thing to highlight, and I think this is a second thing that all the corporations wreck their brains about: how do you evaluate competences? We obviously experiment with all the assessment methods that there are, starting from classical tests, MBTI, Hogan, and new experiments with biometry, etc. But we do believe that our competences are assessed the best by the people who work with us, or will work with us if we talk about recruitment here. And the most important instrument that really permeates all our HR processes is peer review. So we untied the assessment of competences from the direct remuneration. I think this is the third question that everyone wraps their heads around. Do you pay for competences or not? Do you tie that up with salaries and bonuses or not? We made the decision for ourselves is that we don't pay for competences because we think that the only good way to assess them correctly is through peer review, through 360 in all the variations that it might take. And to make sure that this is a valid method, you want to untie this from the money. Because if you assess your boss and you know that it's going to affect the salary of this person or the salary of the person who is your colleague with small kids, you can't get a valid assessment. But then you're going to ask, if that does not affect your bonus, what does it affect? It does affect your whole development. That essentially impacts your entire development in the bank, professional and not professional, and that is really what is affected by the competences assessment. The next turn on this plot is, how do you get a sense of this? A fundamental project of this year that really changed our whole HR is the introduction of 8 success factors. SAP SuccessFactors system. Not only did it allow us to change our processes, not only did it allow us to cover the length and breadth of our employees, this system really changes the roles in the HR process. In the conventional HR process, it used to be more about HR specialists doing HR. In the modern world, HR service gives the tools to the employees. HR does the nudging. We looked it up actually in the dictionary, and the dictionary says that this is really a gentle prod in the side of you by someone else's elbow. HR really creates these tools and really induces people to work with those tools. People need to appreciate that these tools are going to play an important role in their own development, in the development of their teams that are affecting their development. And for people to live in these competences models, we need to make the people feel what those competences are. Where are my assessments? Where are my assessments of other people? If it used to be just getting a link in the email, okay. Thankfully, you would get some kind of a feedback based on the forms that you filled by following that link. We now have a cross-cutting toolkit that really ties all the HR processes, and the people really own their profile, their own HR profile. That is very strongly related to the competences. That is really related to the influence of data that we have been speaking so much about. And the profile of the person is becoming not just a classical HR term, it is becoming the core of the HR system of the organization, and the competences that we are talking about at this session, that really is the key element of any profile. So I showed you our 6 competences. All of them are pretty much the soft skills, except for perhaps the digital skills. But I should say that for every single position that we also have 3-4 professional competencies that are comprising a part of that profile. And when we talk about digital skills, we have group skills, groups that are important to develop depending on the position you work in.
So if a customer works on the front line in our branches, apart from digital skills, like meaning the just literacy and computer literacy and the efficiency of his performance on the system, but the data work is very important, making sure that the data are accurately entered, because if the data are not entered correctly, it would have a major spillover effects on all the experience of a customer, on the entire experience of a customer in the bank. And if we, like, say, we have a head of some technical unit that we have, his or her digital skills will be much different. In Sberbank, there are 58 trajectories for developing digital skills. This is something that we started at the start of the previous year. We understood what skill set this or that employee needs, and when we talk about the development of digital skills, it is of critical importance to understand that people are different. Not everyone needs the same thing. There is no one-size-fits-all solution, and we invested to make sure that we have different development paths, and we have 80% of top managers who underwent the digital skill training based on their needs. And we started this program only in February. And then we're going to have mid-level managers and then the experts to make sure that this base of experts is growing. And 80% of people, that means 22,000. 22,000 people underwent the training, digital skills training. So I started to talk about the profile of a job, which is very important to make sure that you can integrate all of the competences and skills, be it professional and corporate ones, meaning the soft skills and digital skills, to make sure that this is all integrated in HR processes. And perhaps the last issue I would like to talk about here, perhaps everyone is struggling with that issue. Like, where do you use all that assessments and evaluations? So it's all going to be in the system, in the profile. It's all used across all stages of the HR cycle. But we obviously want to migrate from this formal HR to the user-friendly HR that will deliver value to the organization. And obviously, the major challenge for the organization is where to find the needed people, the required people, and the people want to find the best job in Sberbank to promote and develop themselves in Sberbank. Sberbank is a very rich organization in terms of people, because I often ask this question, like, we have a vacancy, it has been open for some time. Can't you find the best candidate among our 330,000 employees? We just don't believe we don't have such an expert. Or, some guy says, I'm at one job, I have been in one job for over 5 years and there is no vacancies in Sberbank. And yes, it has been 2 years that I am responsible for career and development, but I do not have the answer. I mean, I don't think that it is possible that among 330,000 candidates and employees, there are no candidates for this or that position or the vacancy. And we obviously want to close all the gaps to make sure that there are vacancies that are filled with people. And there is a list of people for this or that vacancy. To resolve that problem, we are implementing a project which is called Smart Career. It is based on AI and models, and it answers, is in line with our goals. This is the assistant to develop the individual development plan. And because people sometimes ask us what I need to do to be promoted, and many people ask what I need to develop, what skills do I need to hone to make sure that I'm promoted. And we still get these questions in our HR department, and obviously they are inevitable. We need to assist people in answering these questions. The third question, what is my future role and where can I find the vacancy that would be in line with my skills? And yes, the last question, the most important one, if we know what person do we want to this or that vacancy, where can we find it within our organization? And this is why we're implementing and integrating this system that helps to address these three issues. An important issue that I wanted to talk about when talking about the competencies, there is a profile of a job and the family of jobs. You know, job family is, well, you know everything about it if you work in HR. So it's not rocket science from the theoretical point of view, but it's hard to implement that. We have around 80,000 unique vacancies in Sberbank. To make sure that they actually work, you need to build a proper description for them. And each job has a number of skills. All these 6 corporate skills are the same and consistent across the jobs, and the professional hard skills are obviously different. What have we done? We have aggregated different jobs based on the skills that are being applied in various job families. For instance, if a modelist or data scientist work in the our retail business, we know what skills he has. But what used to be the case? If this person wants to be promoted, he does not know what vacancies there are in the corporate business or in the risks unit. They just didn't know. And we didn't know that we even have this person in retail business, because his grade would be like, you know, the head of the section or a chief expert. So it's very vague. How do you find that person? And now when we unified all the jobs in job families, not based on the business units where these people work, but based on the skills that these people have, I mean the competencies, right? Yes, the competencies and skills. For me, these are, well, these two things are synonymous in a way. So yes, we unified these people, and I mean the skills are very important here, because sometimes we talk about some concrete coding language or like some certification. I mean, some people need certificates to get to this or that job. So the description might be very detailed. And this, anyway, this is job families based on competencies help us to find the employees, the people who are in line with the skill set needed. And people, it's good for them because they can find the jobs, find the vacancies. If they don't know how this job is actually, what is the title of the job, if they don't know where this job is available, the system will help you to do that. Now, what AI has done, in the last 10 years, we have analyzed the best trajectories, development trajectories in Sberbank. It was a major job to look at all the promotions in 10 years. But it was necessary for us, because we understood that from this job, the people are being promoted quickly. For instance, we have a unit that develops processes, and we understood that these people then work in HR efficiently. And there are major, you know, job transitions. Some transitions can be seen by us, but some of them can be only analyzed by a system. So the third thing that we integrated in the model is your personal experience that everyone had. For instance, if I used to work in on a different job, and then I switched the industry, switched the field, you know, your skills will be forgotten, because your new role does not require these new skills. And now the system aggregates all your experience, and in your skill set you have everything that you have accumulated during your entire work life. And this is how the system basically works, and I think that this is our experiment that really help us to link the abstract competency model that was written and described in the various value books and published on the portal, put it in line with the real life of a person. So yes, we find roles for people, so a person can find his or her own position and jobs. Based on our algorithms, the system helps the person to find the best job. The system is learning constantly. The system offers the recommendations for the future development and promotions, and it sees the results of the work, the performance, and the competencies, and some gaps that you need to close. And the third thing that we're going to launch from Q1 next year, when you're a manager and you have the suggestions of your employees that work in other departments, but who can work in your unit, in your section. But it is not our achievements that I wanted to talk about, but about the logic. How can you interconnect various elements, and what real tasks are we addressing with all this diversity of people, roles, and competences? Thank you. Thank you so much, Natalia. That was a great immersion in the corporate kitchen, corporate world of Sberbank, and the attempt to kind of digitize the roles that are very hard to digitize. I'd like to ask Elia to talk about the international experience and what leadership approaches can be used in these corporations, and how do you develop the skills in the corporations?
The theme I'm going to talk about is, let's say, the leadership responsibility of bridging the gap of the digital skills. But actually, why I think I'm qualified of speaking here. First, I advise companies on their digital strategies, but I'm also a fully qualified digital grandmother. So my mother is 90 years old, I have 2 daughters, and I have 3 granddaughters. The youngest, the oldest is 4 years old, already has an iPad, and is also learning coding with gamification. My mother, who is 90, has 2 mobile phones and a laptop. So earlier today, I was listening to the presentation of Sberbank on the technology trends, and there was a presenter joking about the grandmother coming to the branch and asking about bitcoins and kind of not knowing. Be aware of the digital generation grandmothers. I think they will be different. But anyway, so that's the kind of second qualification. But basically, going back to the leadership responsibility, according to research and also messages here, 90% of the leadership think there is going to be a digital transformation which is vital and necessary. However, at the same time, 83% are unhappy with the progress, and lack of skills, the gap, is considered as the biggest obstacle. Okay, then you're kind of thinking, okay, what can we do with that? Very little has been done, because the skills missing are about the same today that were they about 6 years ago. So the gap is there. Now there is some investigation then that, okay, what are those features, things that make some companies more successful? And there is a study which shows that the kind of key competence of people that make them 3 times more effective of achieving the transformation is something is called, nice English words, like a digital dexterity. I had to look at the kind of a book, what does it mean? But it basically adds to the agile and nimble the capability to solve complex problems fast. So that's basically saying that that's the kind of a capability that is explaining a lot of the success. And how that is then kind of like, what explains that some people have that, it's estimated that only about 9% of the employees have such skills. So it's really rare. But then it's the question, can you acquire more of those, or can you develop that within the organization? And basically, it is about behaviors, competencies, capabilities, for first, having the ambition of wanting to do that, second, having the ability. Typically people who have these abilities, they have a good understanding of the business relationships, interdependencies. They work well with different people and create teams that are multi-skilled. They are politically savvy, so they understand how to influence, how to sell things to others. And they also have this system thinking, problem-solving skills. So then it's a question, how in a company can you develop those skills? So there is a lot of this mobility. I think there is also changing jobs, mobility, working in a new ways. And what can the leadership do there to promote that? First, they need to create a story of this kind of a multiple skilled, fast learning, fast changing environment and the necessary need for the staff to change that. So they need to create a story and make that their top priority, that's promoted, that's supported. Second, they need to show with their own behavior that they are ready to change, they promote, they talk, they do behave differently. And third, it's being operationalized, and I think it's about when we talked about competencies, that how you promote people, that you kind of not only go the ladders up and create career paths, but create kind of multiple ways of moving around the organization. You promote behaviors that show this dexterity, this agility, multi-skilled, understanding systems. You don't kind of fix on roles, but you fix on workflows. So that's kind of one thing that is important. The corporate leadership or the public sector leadership encourages and operationalizes this building of this new talent. Point number 2 is that when we talk about, we talk here fluently about competency, skills, talent, knowledge, all those type of things. But that's a simple model for me is that the competence is a combination of knowledge, second being ability, and third being a skill. Let's kind of make it more concrete. If I'm kind of being operated by a surgeon, I really want them to have the knowledge about my body, of kind of how it operates. I really want them to have the ability, like stable hands and sharp eyes, kind of being able to do that. And I really want them to have the skill, which is an experience of actually doing that. So I don't want to do, even if they have all the knowledge, all the abilities, they need to have the kind of experience. But if you think in the current world, knowledge is becoming old very, very quickly, and even the kind of the skills and the tools may be kind of outdated. So what then comes instead, or fixes the problem, it's about learning. How do you promote learning in the new ways? And we all know this kind of favorable word, agile, but I really kind of want to promote this learning agility, agile learning, which happens in the companies, in the agencies, where you kind of think differently. And I think this, when we talked about universities, this kind of micro-credentials. So it's a question of continuous learning, on demand. I think all of us who worked longer, we're saying that, okay, now I need to learn something new. Then you go to your boss and say, yeah, you can attend that external course 6 months from now. And then kind of you come back, 50% of that is a waste of time. It's not what we want to do in agile changing world. So the learning needs to be on demand, immediately. It needs to be in chunks that you can apply at work, because typically the agile learners, they can learn from experience, from networks, from other things, and they need to fast apply that to their day-to-day work. And it's actually now kind of like recommended, and that's what we Gartner do as well, that 70% of the learning happens while working. And it needs to be built into the agile learning model. So it's not about the training, actually about the learning, will probably represent only about 10%. It's vital, but all the next steps, they need to be kind of built in the corporations in a new way, or being able to kind of learn from others, move around, again, about the workforce mobility, but also learning at work. and encouraging people who have this kind of a natural agility. And actually, that's also a trait you would want to have in people in the future, is that who are agile, fast learners, who learn from the history, learn from others, and apply it quickly. Because that's, again, giving an opportunity which is totally new. Then a third point, I would like to kind of, from the corporate point of view, if you think we always talk about this customer experience, customers, and that's our core markets, or citizens, or whatever is our kind of a target group. And it's an interesting market. We build a lot of facilities. But if we think, what's the fuel of the future? It is about the talent. Do we manage the talent in the equal enthusiasm that we manage the customers? And the talent market may be in the future even more important than your customer market, because if you don't have the talent, you will lose the customers. So then the question is that, okay, you have a brand, the customer brand, but do you have an employer brand? Do you have a kind of a way of attracting the right people? I remember in one of my previous jobs, we had difficulties in finding people. We had only 4 applications to a job that we thought is vital for our success. And we started systematically rethinking our employer brand. So what the people would like, who we want, what's the values they would appreciate. And then, like, by this thinking and systematic approach, about a couple of months ago, we got 40 applications to the same job. Because we were rethinking that is a new market where we need to be equally careful. That's attracting new talent. But basically, the other thing is also how to retain that top talent. Some research shows that if you have top talent, if you don't make a decision they expect in a month, they will leave you. So it's the question of also culture, inside, or retain. We talked about customer retention. Okay, we talk about staff retention, but especially talent retention is so important. And you think of those digitally skilled people, and next workforce generation, they are looking for a different way of culture, more independent, more flexibility, continuous learning, agile learning, teamwork, and they are not stuck in the way we used to work. So basically, this creating a talent platform where you also think of the brand, think of the access, think of the kind of maintaining that are so important, and that's the responsibility of the leadership. So basically 3 things. Creating a culture that encouraging those competencies that are vital for digital transformation. Building a model for agile learning within the companies and creating that. And the third, managing your talent and making that you actually address the talent market and create adequate talent platform for managing those competencies that are critical for your success.
Большое спасибо, Эя.
Eija, thank you so much.
А давайте теперь попытаемся.
And why don't we try to understand now how you can measure and assess those complex digital skills. Svetlana Avdeeva, you want to share your opinion with us? Yeah, one of the more popular questions at this time in the chat room is about assessing the digital skills. Perhaps after that we can ask another question to Natalia after Svetlana's remarks. Yeah. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Yes, we can speak about forming the digital skills, but before we design the curricula, before we design the adaptive syllabi, we need to understand what the ground zero is. What is the cutaway view for the current skills of the respondents? The assessment tools, because the digital literacy is a pretty broad notion, the tools have been in development for about 20 years now, and those started with assessments of various technical skills, and as those assessment methodologies developed in the digital society, understanding gradually emerged that we need to assess how we can work with information in the digital environment, how we can create information, how we can evaluate it, how we can interpret it, how successful we are with resolving issues in the digital environment. The definition gradually shifted away from the technical skills towards cognitive skills. For this reason, as we developed our tools, we took the definition of the G20 summit. That definition comprises 5 skills: information literacy, computer literacy, information literacy, media literacy, and proclivity to technological innovations. But that really stresses the information literacy and the communicative literacy, because those are critical for the successes of kids as they go about their lives. And this is quite untrivial to measure, because these are difficult constructs. They are latent, they're not obvious. And to measure, you need to really clearly define all those entities. There are tools in the world to measure just the cognitive skills. There are not that many, very few actually. These are the developments of Education Testing Service, ETS. They developed that into iThinking. OSCR have good toolkits. They developed into iSILS, and I'm going to tell you about the outcomes of implementing that worldwide and in Russia specifically. You can read the slides, and as you do that, I'm going to say that since 2012 we've been developing a digital skill assessment tool as a tool to assess the ability to learn in the digital environment. Why are we saying that this is info-communicational literacy, ISC literacy? Why did we call it that? These are scenario type tests. Kids are immersed in the digital environment. They resolve various objectives. Scenario type problems to solve, performance-based assessment. You can see the framework. It's about working with the various computer environments, but I would like to dwell on the outcomes of this study, because telling you about this, the toolkit, it's actually time-consuming. I'm just going to give you the link and you're going to browse at your leisure. Now, here are the examples of the tasks, but I would like to dwell more on the outcomes. Kids get the outcomes right away, right after the test. And it makes sense to dwell on the outcomes, actually. Because all the tests, because all the studies that we do are usually attended by context-based questionnaires. Why did we take the main secondary school to test? We thought this is a very important transitional age. Sometimes kids go on to scientific career, sometimes they go to all kinds of other occupations, but it might make sense to understand how prepared the graduates are for the life in the digital society. And this is one of the most recent studies that we have taken, in the industrially developed region of the Russian Federation. We did that on 5 levels, and the first 2 levels, the developing level and the that's the lower intermediate level. I mean, learning for life, that's not for these kids. It's not for the kids in the lower intermediate level. 20 to 50% of kids do not really make it to the intermediary level in our test of working with the digital environment. When we speak about bridging the digital divide between the rural children and urban children with digital technologies, I mean, our study shows that 5 years on from the 5 years back when we started doing it, the digital divide is still there, and it is maintained, and it is growing. It's just a definition matter. And I can really talk about the validity and reliability of the outcomes that we get with our tools. If we look at the slide here, even small towns are sometimes more proficient in forming digital literacy than rural areas. You know, a lot of our research shows that, you know, when we did the first study in 2013, we were really surprised. School did not really affect the formation of digital skills. We studied this and that, we tried to correlate the factors. We got the first data in 2016. The school did not affect. When kids move away from reproductive learning to some kind of a creative learning, then yes, the activity at school does affect the ICT competencies. But then still, this is a very small percentage. And if you ask the question about how we need to change the educational process to actually affect the formation of digital skills in school, not outside of it, that is a crucial question to ask. And we encountered the fact that, on the one hand, teachers use ICT more and more, yet that does not reflect on the kids. And our focus groups showed that teachers think that the ICT is used in preparation to classes, in preparation of methodological materials. Kids think that they use ICT when they actually use ICT to do something in their project work, in training sets, and everywhere else. You know, Tatiana, we've got another speaker, Andrei Chertok, and he's going to share how that is done. Yeah. Once we defined what the digital skills level is with every child, how the various elements are more or less pronounced, then we can select the educational program that will really address the situation. It's going to be different educational modules, and it's going to be both area-specific and non-area-specific meta skills. And let me just show what place Russia occupied in the first international study to assess the ICT literacy. Essentially, the elements of this assessment are all about the digital literacy, what we call that. Ability to work with information, computer science thinking, the elements of technical skills. These are basically the good framework elements. The first study happened in 2013, the second study took place in 2018, the outcomes are going to be available in 2019, perhaps early 2020. Russia, if you look at it, we're very afraid to see where we are, because the selection of schools was made by the International Association to Assess the Educational Quality. They administered the study, and the selection covered a lot of schools, very remote schools sometimes, very deep in Russia, very deep in the Far East. You can see the geographical distribution. The gray areas were the ones covered by the sample. If you look at the outcomes, we actually breathed out. We took a deep breath, and that was a sigh of relief. We came 8th or 9th. Whether we did, we did not score that badly, actually. Our average score is 516. The winner is 553, and Australia is 542. If you look at the distribution, about a half is level 2. It's basic literacy, the first level. And if you do not look at the top levels, but look at the bottom levels, about 36%, about a third of people do not know how to use information in the digital environment to work successfully in the emerging digital society. Thank you, Svetlana. Thank you. And perhaps we pass over to Andrei. Perhaps we ask him to give us the answer about what the AI Academy has to offer. The Academy was established this year. You did a lot of teaching to kids. How do you raise the level of competences in digital literacy, digital skills? Maria, thank you. I've got the honorable mission to deliver pain in the run-up to lunch. I only have 2 slides. I'm going to fail miserably with that mission. Now, before we go to kids, I'd like to say 2 words about the adults. The topic of this conversation is more than just learning the skills and competences in the digital world. I mean, discussing the skills takes a definition of what the digital economy is and what the digital era is. Do you think you understand what a digital economy is? If you do, please raise your hand. I think we need to use that as a starting point. Well, it's not that many. Well, that, to put it mildly, you can't really discuss what the skills need to be if you don't understand what the digital economy is. And before we talk about the skills, we need to understand, I mean, most people here are educators. We need to understand what the digital economy is and what the goals of the digital economy are. I had the honor to have something to do with teaching digital skills in Sberbank, and we are now increasingly active in teaching executives outside of Sberbank. We are working with government officials as well. We are trying to give definitions, and a lot of people are actually involved in the nationwide program of the digital economy. And the first thing they ask is, what do we do? What do the senior leaders of the country want from us? I think the answer to this question is digital economy is primarily focused on the individual. If it's the government, it's a citizen. If it's a bank, it's about the customers of the bank. And the job of the digital services and products is to make the lives of people lives of better quality. The services and products must be more personalized. And if we start answering that, we unwind this bundle of problems, of questions about what to teach. So Natalia was quite right in saying that a lot of people need to be taught a lot of different things. Executives do not need to be versed in the technical details, what's under the hood of the AI, but the executive needs to be able to set the objectives. And then it's a soft skill for the technical experts about understanding the executives. Very often, if you know what AI is, you cannot talk the same language with the executives. You live in the different worlds.
And these trajectories that we can see in Sberbank right now are the result of that, because different people need different skills, but together they need to be able to create digital services and digital products. And these products should be of highest quality, quick and efficient. Therefore, the major concept behind the training and education in this area should be focused around the creation of products and services, in the general sense of the word. So when we launched the AI Academy project for the school children, we asked the same question to ourselves. What do we want to give children? What do we want to teach them? What is the goal of this education? And unfortunately, currently, the high school education and any school education is, really lags behind. There is a huge gap between what they teach in terms of AI or mathematics and what companies need. And we need to close the gap, obviously. And on the previous session, the panelists said that you do not need to try to change the system of education in schools, but perhaps you would need to go to alternative structures and institutions like School 21 or to a corporate university to get the skills that are down to earth. But the attempt to change the schools, the secondary education schools, was done, and we know that there are some elitist schools, elitist circle of people, of programmers, of mathematicians that are participating in major competitions, and they are living in the digital era right now. They understand how to develop the digital skills, but the task to increase the scope, the coverage of that digital skills training for the school children was not met. And the task is to maximize that coverage, to immerse children in AI and digital skills. They need to know what it is. They need to feel it, not only to hear about AI in some news report. So we decided this is an awareness-raising project, an advocacy project, and we needed to understand how to increase the funnel and to increase the number of people and the scope of children who would learn AI. And we put the lower threshold, 7th grade, 7th year. We decided that is the good barrier, although we understood that 4-year and 5-year school children actually are quite good in learning this content. And we developed several levels of the content that we tried to use to cater for the needs of the school children. Now, the first stage is the most difficult one. How to maximize the coverage of schools and children. And we understood that basically there is no content for children from the industry and from the experts that can be adapted and shown to them. And so we had to build it from scratch, to make content from scratch. And it's very good that those who are engaged in creation of digital products are actually developing this content, because children right now, and actually based on the results of the project implementation, we understood that children are very good in learning new things, much quicker than the adults that we learn. However, we lack the adults that would teach them. And those who can do that, they are either working in some companies, in some these are representatives of the industries, they are AI experts or developers, and we really cannot work without their involvement. We really cannot teach children without their engagement. So we have developed the basic video trainings and the basic content, and it was very important to deliver the basic principles to the children in entertaining form, exciting form. What is AI? How it was developed? Where we can find AI applications around the world? And many of adults actually, even now, do not understand that they have AI in their smartphone, in their services, and we, put all that content in the exciting, interesting format, and we really try to kind of, to bring the state-of-the-art solutions to the schools. And on one hand, the Sberbank Sberbank employees made field visits to schools located in different cities in Russia. But what is most important, that we trained teachers. 65% of all the children were taught these things by the teachers that we trained, in-house school teachers, and we explained to teachers how to actually give that information to children without overcomplicating things. And for teachers that was a totally new thing, so for us it was even more challenging to teach teachers than to teach children. And it is very hard for someone from humanities to make this person code in Python or to work in AI. That's the one of the filters that filtered out the people from humanities, although it might be beneficial to them. Now the third one was we made micro tasks. You make a simple task. The first task is simple, to entertain you, to get you interested, and then the tasks are becoming more and more complicated. This is a gamification really element, and they had to pass through 5 levels on our platforms and using Python. And actually they in the last stages, the school children were forecasting the results of a Dota 2 game, a Dota 2 competition. This is a very popular computer game among the school children, so they were interested. They were interested to forecast the results of this Dota 2 competition. And when they feel interested, it's much easier to engage them, to get them interested, in the content that we want to teach to them. And based on the results of the lectures, we try to understand and to make them understand why are they learning that for, and even the salary, what would be my future salary if I learn these skills? And all these questions were asked to us very often. And this current generation is very cynical, in a good sense of the word, and very down to earth. So these down to earth stuff, like how do you apply this knowledge, is very important to talk about that. And obviously it was supported by a huge amount of number of organizations. This was a major task, and the contribution to the future made a great contribution here. And yes, the challenges are in the presentation. Yes, thank you so much. We are going to have a special panel discussion on the session at 3 p.m. how to develop digital skills and digital competences in schools. We have various experts invited for this panel session, but there are many questions, and we decided to, answer at least one question, a very popular question. Perhaps we will ask this question to everyone, and you'll have like 1 minute to answer that question. We'll ask Natalia Zhuravleva to speak about more detail in terms of, how can you measure digital skills with this 360 degrees assessment system. So she'll perhaps have a little bit more time. And the questions will be published in the website of the conference, and with the answers. So the question is, and we would ask everyone to spend 1 minute of answering this question. What is the principal new character of the digital skill? can we say that there is no novelty here? These are the same abilities of thinking, and they should be formed by the traditional known methods. Or is it a principally new thing? Now, I think Maria will answer the question. Yes, my answer is yes, it is the same thing, but the environment should be different. It's just that the ability to work with information, output and the input information. I can create this information, I can process this information, I can create it in different formats, so I can communicate with different audiences in different contexts using these new technologies and new forms. So yeah, this is the good old literacy, but new forms and interests. Pekka, you, please.
I fully agree with Maria. In essence, it's the same. But I think the pace of change is so fast that that is, in a way, the new component here. And also that we should have these, should I say, T-shaped competencies, so that we are good generalists in multiple domains, so that we are able to understand a little bit of the technology and a little bit of something else, even if we most probably are more invested in one of these areas. But then we have this very, very in-depth knowledge of something. So we need to make lawyers understand a little bit of artificial intelligence. We need to have the leaders understand a little bit of everything. We need to have the engineers and the AI people to understand how the other disciplines work, so that the competences will be like T-shaped, this kind of broad, holistic side where you know a little bit about everything, and then you have your own specialty.
Yeah, please.
I would agree with the people that commented speed has more value, how quickly you can do things. And second, I think, is the learning ability, how fast you can learn and adapt. Those are the things, so it's the same kind of traits and features, but there is more value, more weight on speed, flexibility, and learning capability.
Natalia?
Natalia, please. I think that this is. I stand to be corrected, but I would not agree with the previous speakers. I think it is principally new. I think it has never been that difficult to develop these relevant skills, and it has never been that challenging to change the behavior of people. Now, talking about the question, can you measure it using the 360 degrees assessment? I think yes, because this is the behavior that you can measure. You can resolve problems, you can code, program, you can do anything you can. But if other people see that you still use paper, you still do not drive down the full-time employee headcount, and the time to market is not decreasing, and the customers are not satisfied because the customers are thinking in this, in this vein that the system recommends everything to them, and you do not deliver that. And you can measure these skills, whether you have the skills or not. Obviously, we have tests, and we are measuring by KPIs. Everyone have KPIs right now. Each person in organization has the goals that you won't be able to deliver on without digital skills, and this, I think, is of critical importance. Thank you, Svetlana. On one hand, the digital literacy is meaning being able to write and read in the digital era and digital environment, but the information that we work with is principally different. Literacy, has it changed from writing of different types of pen? No. From 17th century to 20th century? No. Book printing? No. But some skills are changing. And if you immerse a person or a children in this digital environment, we work differently with information. We process different types of information differently. Therefore, this thinking is not changing, but the focus is changing, of course. Yes, please, Andrei. It is very hard for me to add anything new, and I think that digital literacy and digital skills are just related to the fact that technologies are being developed. We have data, we have infrastructure, and obviously people need to change to be able to work with all that. On the other hand, I think that multidisciplinary approach is a very important story, and being able to go outside the boundaries of your competencies. You know, Mr. Graf talked about that, about the mathematical school children, that they need to go outside of their mathematical school box, so to speak, and to go even further. Yes, thank you so much. We were able today to discuss the culture of education and the need to renew your competencies and to hone in your skills that you would need to work in our diverse and rapidly changing and challenging complex world that is becoming increasingly unpredictable. But there are risks as well, like digital dementia. You know, people talk about digital dementia right now, and we have more questions than answers right now. And it's good that on level of various companies, of various organizations and even countries, we can develop the competency model that is needed to work in this digital world. And we're talking about digital literacy, but how to develop that, how to form this culture to make sure that people want to update their competencies and know how to do it quickly. You know, perhaps these questions still have to be discussed, and perhaps you know, it will be answered by, you know, during multiple conferences ahead. Anyway, thank you so much, dear colleagues. We're having a lunch now. I'd like to thank the speakers